right around mile 4, I said, all right, I'm going to just keep my eyes on Matt Hansen, and I'm going to try my best to see if I can close on him, or at least keep him within eye shot. And maybe if I can do that, we'll catch some of these other guys that are up the road. And that's what I did. And yeah, it took me from about mile 4 to maybe mile 11, maybe mile 12 before I caught Matt.
What is up, YouTube? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. For those that are new to the channel, I'm Joe Wilson, and I make videos related to triathlon, whether it's swimming, biking, running, all those cool things you can find right here on this channel. So fast forward to 2018, you did that race again, got third place that year. Yeah. How was that race compared to 2017?
So I would say that 2018 Chattanooga 70.3 was probably my best race that I ever did. Not my best result from a placing standpoint, but if you look at the quality of the field, if you look at my overall time, if you look at just tactically how I raced it, I did the best race I think I've ever done on that day. So I was pretty pumped. And just as a side story, that race almost didn't happen for me. So ever since 2000 and the beginning of 2017, I had a great homestay up on Signal Mountain. Mm-hmm. And Steve Bender and his wife, they were incredible. And so I would go up there and stay with them, and then, drive down the mountain to the city and do the race. And so the morning of the 2018 race, I woke up. Of course, the pros don't have to rack their bikes the morning or the night beforehand. They get to, I don't know, sleep with their bikes and rack them the morning of. I never quite understood the benefit of not racking the night before, but anyway, I followed I followed everybody else and just kept my bike with me. But I put it on my bike rack, or on my car rack the morning of course, it's pitch black. And, you've got your armrests on your aero bars. And I always got in the habit of taking those off when I put it up on top of my car. Just, I don't know, I was paranoid that they'd fly off in the wind. And so I took them off and put them on the roof of my car. And of course, it's like 5 a.m, right? And so I got in my car and started driving, and I probably made it about 3 miles down the road. And all of a sudden I was like, oh no, I never put my pads inside my car. They were just on top of my car. So I don't have any arm pads. I'm just going to have like scratchy Velcro with my aero bars. That's not good. So I stopped, turned around. Of course, it's pitch black outside. And so I drove back, was looking for my arm pads, hoping that I'd be able to find them on the road somewhere. And sure enough, probably about a quarter mile away from the homestay, they were just sitting right in the middle of the road, where they had blown off, right away when I had started driving a little faster. So that probably, my heart rate was probably higher at that point of the day than it ever was during the race. So I probably could have done the race without arm pads, but it would have not gone probably very well. So anyway, that happened. The swim was not quite as technical as it was in 2017. I mean, the current was still there, but I don't think it was nearly as strong. At that point in 2018, I was a better swimmer than I was the year before. And so I was a little bit more confident that I could potentially stay with the front group swimmers at least a little bit longer and be a little closer to them coming out of the water. And so I remember lining up behind Starkowitz and behind Collington, and I said to myself, I'm just going to swim as hard as I can and stay in their wake, basically, and hopefully I can make it to the turnaround. And if I make it to the turnaround and I get a current helping me, it should theoretically be easier to stay with them all the way back. So that was the goal. It didn't quite work out, although I was really close. I think I stayed with them until probably about, I don't know, maybe 50 meters until the turnaround buoys. And then I kind of lost it a little bit. And then just technically going around the buoys, I probably lost just a little bit more time. It's easy to take corners around buoys when you're just like swimming zone 2 and you can focus on things. But when you're basically flooded with lactic acid and your heart rate is sky high and you're just, right on the edge. It's a lot harder to be as technically sound. And so I probably didn't take that turn quite as well as I could have. And I probably lost a little bit more time, and I kind of lost the group there, right basically at the turn. There were two guys that were I think right behind me, who I also probably helped pop off the front group, which they probably weren't too happy about, but that's the way it goes sometimes. Ricky Flynn and Benson Hall, I remember. And so we worked together the rest of the swim and managed to actually limit our losses pretty good. You can still, since it's a straight shot to the swim exit, you can still see the swimmers ahead of you. You're not utilizing their draft or anything, but you can still see the splashes in the water. And so I knew we were pretty close to at least some guys, maybe not the front swimmers, but at least a good pack. We were probably about 30 seconds, 20 or 30 seconds behind them coming out of the water. And so, I made a concerted effort to make it through T1 as fast as I could to see if I could get a little closer to that group. And then basically told myself I was going to ride as hard as I had to catch that group, basically come hell or high water, because I knew that was the race right there. That the quality of the field was so high that if I didn't make that group, I probably wasn't going to see them for the rest of the race. You had guys like Matt Hansen and Kevin Collington and Jackson Laundrie and Starkwoods, of course, and Joe Gambles, Andy Potts. I mean, like, the list was super long of like these superstars. And so I got on the bike and basically for the first 20 minutes just hammered. I think I rode about 300 watts, which for me was a pretty hard effort for a 70.3 ride. And I was able to see those front guys up the road, which was great because as long as I could keep them in eyesight, I was confident that I'd be able to chew into that lead a little bit more, and at least I knew where they were. And so it took me about just over 30 minutes to catch the main group, which was actually pretty big. I think what had happened was Matt Hansen and a few guys were those guys that were like right ahead of me coming out of the swim. But then there was like a bigger group with like Andy Potts and Joe Gambles that was ahead of them. And so I think it took everybody about 30 minutes before like all of those groups kind of combined into like one massive group. And so there were probably about 12 or 13 of us in that group when I caught it. And I was super happy to be there because of course you're looking at these guys like, wow, I caught the group that has Andy Potts. Like, there's no way I should have been swimming anywhere remotely close to him. So like, I'm in a good spot right now. I felt really, really confident and my legs felt good. But because I had been putting in a chase for such a long period of time, I just made the decision to like hang out in the group for a little bit. And, there is, even at a draft legal distance, there is definitely a benefit to riding in a group. There's no question about it. And so, I mean, I went from riding, in the 280 to 300 watt range for the first 30 minutes to, the next 45 minutes I was in the group, and I think I averaged like 250 and we moved just as fast, and so just being whatever it was, 4 bike lengths behind, 12 meters, there's a huge difference. So that also helped me quite a bit, and it helped the group, to be honest. So that's just the nature of it right now. And I think that's why a lot of pros push for a bigger draft zone, because there is definitely a benefit in guys like Lionel Sanders and some of these super strong bikers, Sam Long, right? Like, they want to use their bike strength as an advantage. And when you've got a group of 10 guys that can ride 50 watts less and go the same speed, then it just hurts the guys that are really strong bikers. But anyway, so another thing that happened on that bike during that 45 minutes, there's a racer, a good friend of mine, Justin Park, who I think was from Georgia area. He had just a horrific accident in our pace line, probably about halfway through that time. I remember I was about 3 bike lengths behind him and everything was going fine. And then all of a sudden a bird flew right through his front wheel and just like, boom. I mean, he was down on the ground immediately. And it was a sad definitely a sad situation because I think he ended up fracturing his collarbone and he did something to his scapula. And I mean, he was out of it for quite a while after that accident, but it was such a freak thing where Bird just basically, I don't know if he had a tri-spoke wheel or if he had, a 90 millimeter, zip wheel, but either way, the Bird just basically took him out of nowhere. I mean, it was, it could have happened to anybody, but, so that was a little scary. And I was only, I think 3 bikes behind him. So basically everybody was swerving out of the way when it happened because we didn't know what the heck, it just happened so fast. He just crashed, but so that happened. And then we rode a little bit longer. I was still feeling great. Oh, and unfortunately, and I will say this, I don't know everything that happened with that crash, but I do think it happened pretty close to an aid station, if I'm not mistaken. And so I feel like, I think Andy Potts may have stopped a little bit. So kudos to him. I mean, I think in hindsight, I probably should have done the same thing. But that was a really good show of sportsmanship by Andy Potts. I'll have to say that because I think he did stop and just check on him, make sure he was okay. I was unable to do that myself. So for that, I apologize to Justin, but, anyways, yeah, I guess about 20 minutes after that, I was still feeling great. We still had a big group and looking around at the guys that were in the group, I was becoming maybe a little less confident that I was going to be able to outrun all those guys. And my legs felt great on the bike. And I knew that there were still guys up the road that, like guys like Starkowitz, guys like Jackson Laundry and Kevin Collington, who I had not seen yet. And you just have to assume that those guys are just head down hammering, right? They're not playing tactics with the group. And so I didn't want them to get too far ahead of us. So I made the decision to basically get to the front of the group and put in like a 5 to 6 minute effort at like 310 to 315 watts and just see what would happen, see if anybody would go with me. And so I did. I moved to the front. I think I had to pass like 4 or 5 guys in a row and then just kept that effort going for another 5 minutes. And I remember right around 5 minutes or so, Matt Hansen pulled up beside me. And it was so funny because he turned to me and he goes, "Hey, we got a gap. We got to go. Let's take 5-minute pulls. Come on." And I was like, "Oh, that's Matt Hansen. All right, well, that's cool." And I looked back for the first time in 5 minutes and you couldn't see anybody, which was kind of cool that I basically I don't know if I blew the group up, but I definitely created a gap myself and Matt went with me. So yeah, he was great. We took pulls for 5 minutes. I just set my lap timer on my bike computer and we traded pulls pretty evenly for about 30 minutes, basically all the way down to the long descent from Chickamauga. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I assume you know what I'm talking about, that long, the longest
downhill. Yeah, it's about a mile.
Yeah, right. And so we got to the bottom of that, and then he was riding super strong, and he ended up gapping me a little bit on that downhill. And then he got me by enough where I wasn't going to put in a massive effort to catch him and then repass him. So I kind of let him go a little bit, but I could see Kevin Collington up the road once we got back out onto the main highway. And so, yeah, I just basically did what I could at that point to stay within eye shot of Matt Hansen. And I ended up catching Kevin with about 3 or 4 miles to go on the bike. And we ended up getting off the bike together, which was great. And we still had a pretty big gap to everybody that was in that main group behind us. And so Starkey was up front and Jackson had I think come off in second place. And then Hansen was just ahead of us. And then Collington and myself. I can't remember if there's anybody else up there. There might, I think Antoine DeRoche, I think he was also up there as well, but he was relatively close to us. I didn't catch him on the bike, but I think he was maybe only a minute ahead of us getting off the bike. And so I started the run with Kevin and we ran together for about 3 or 4 miles. And Matt Hansen, boom, he was up the road like a bullet. I mean, that dude can run like the wind.
It's ugly.
And so Yeah, well, hey, it works. Whether you're ugly or whether you look like I think Sebastian Kienle said, like, I don't care if you look like the Walking Dead. If you're running faster than me, it doesn't matter, right? So um yeah, he moves. So, but I wasn't ready to run quite that fast at the time. So I ran with Kevin and we had a pretty good pace for a little bit. But I was feeling good and I was feeling confident. We passed Antoine, so I knew we were running in the top 5. And so right around mile 4, I said, all right, I'm gonna just keep my eyes on Matt Hansen, and I'm gonna try my best to see if I can close on him, or at least keep him within eye shot. And maybe if I can do that, we'll catch some of these other guys that are up the road. And that's what I did. And yeah, it took me from about mile 4 to maybe mile 11, maybe mile 12 before I caught Matt. But I was inching down on him pretty much the whole way. It took me, 8 or 9 miles to make up 25 seconds on him. But I finally did. And when I caught him, I mean, I think he was doing whatever he could to hold me off. There's definitely a mind game to racing. If you're ahead of somebody, you're still ahead of them until they pass you, right? And so even if they're 5 seconds back, like, just fake it until you make it, right? And like, maybe they just give up, because everybody's hurting at that point. But I think once I caught him, I think he just figured like the writing was on the wall, and I don't think he was feeling very good. I think he had done an Ironman a couple weeks before that, and so his legs probably, didn't feel great. But once I passed him, I think we had like a mile and a half left to go. And I think I put like 30 or 40 seconds into him over the last part of the course. So I think he just kind of like shut it down at that point. And then, yeah, I was too far away to catch Starkey and Jackson. They were up the road a little bit more. I think I was catching them, but they had too big of a lead and they ran too strong. So yeah, I ended up finishing 3rd, but had a big PR. I think I went 3:48, which I was super pumped about. And all in all, it was just a great day for me.
Nice, nice. So let's talk about the course. What's your favorite part about that 70.3 course?
I mean, I think my favorite part about the 70.3 course is the part that you wind through the path on the run. You get some good shade. There's a couple places that I think they're like restaurants or some kind of a bar that's right on the river. And so you get a bunch of guys, a bunch of spectators that are there like cheering you on during parts of the run, which you don't get really anywhere else on the course except for maybe that one spot in Chickamauga on the bike course. So it's uplifting, and just the variety of like winding through the paths and having different things to look at. I mean, that's my favorite part.
Do you feed off the energy from the crowds? I mean, because you guys always look like you're in a zone, like there could be like nobody around, but I'm sure you're like feeding off that, right? I mean, the people cheering.
Oh yeah, it helps for sure. I mean, having people cheering for you, it makes a huge difference. And when you're out there by yourself and nobody's out there, you are your only cheerleader at that point, and even when people are cheering for you, sometimes you're still your only cheerleader. I think it's much more difficult to like really give yourself enough positive self-talk when you're just out there by yourself and everything around you is telling you to slow down or to maybe not give up, but like just relent a little bit. And when you have other people out there that, even if they're saying silly stuff, like you're almost there when you've got like 7 more miles, right? At least like you've got other people that you're like, okay, maybe they believe in me, I should believe in myself too.
Yeah. What do you think is the hardest part about that course? Do you know that hill about mile 26 on the bike, Andrews, where you're flying, all of a sudden you got to make this sharp left turn and go up that hill? How did the dynamics work there? I mean, is everybody putting out 600 watts? Anybody drop their chain right there?
Well, I don't think I ever put out 600 watts in a 70.3. So that was a tough part for sure. But Well, I think that the most technical part was, and I don't think this is the same part that you're talking about. When you go up the hill and then you go down and then go around that sharp, is that what you're talking about? Like right at the tip of the bottom of the loop?
Yeah. So right there,
Yeah, yeah,
you're flying on curved
yeah,
road, and all of a sudden you got to make that hard left turn and
right.
it spikes up. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a tough, that's probably, I would say, the most technical part of that course. For the most part, it's a pretty rolling, easy bike course.
Mhm.
That is definitely the part that you have to watch out for the most. Um, yeah, I would say that's probably the hardest. I would say also, just in general, the part out on the highway on the run. I mean, I'd say that's just the hardest, just from a kind of the opposite of what we were talking about before, with nobody is out there spectating. It's hot, there's no shade. And if it is hot and it is sunny, you just don't get any relief from any of those things. And it just seems like the road goes on for what seems like forever without changing. And so just mentally, I think that that's the most difficult part
I
of the
definitely agree.
course.
Let's talk
Yeah.
about, let's be honest with the heat. You guys are done like 9 o'clock in the morning, okay?
Well, that's a benefit of the pro race. It does start earlier, so we don't have quite as much time in the heat of the day.
So real quick, let's talk about the swim. That initial start, okay, like, because it looks like you know how the trout or the salmon go upstream and they're all like jumping over the dam. That initial start for a pro race, I mean, what are you thinking? The adrenaline going? I mean, are you like nervous? Like, I mean, how does that compare to an age group race?
I mean, it's totally different, night and day. So when I first started racing pro, well, my whole pro career, for to be honest, um, the first 5 to 10 minutes of the swim is just a flat out effort for me. I mean, I go into it thinking I'm doing a 500-meter time trial right now, and I don't even think about the rest of the day. You know, you're doing a 4-hour race, or 4 hours give or take. But really, my race is the first 5 minutes of the swim. That's what's going to set up my race. And not every swimmer has to swim like that. Obviously, if you're a better swimmer, you don't have to go out that hard. But for me, if I was to go out at like a sustainable, even pace, I would get dropped so quickly, and I would lose so much time on the swim, and my race would be over instantly. And that's the biggest difference between the age group race and the pro race, is that pacing just goes almost entirely out the window for the most part. You have to be very responsive, and um, you have to race with your competitors, because there are just so many dynamics that come into play. In the swim, if you can make a good group, you can use other people to help that swim speed all the way along. If you're by yourself, you're gonna bleed time the whole time. Same thing on the bike. If you're in a group or you're working with even just a couple guys, it really does help you. Running, maybe not so much, but I found that tactically, of course, you have that front, the first 5 to 6 minutes on the swim, where the selections are really made. And the good swimmers know that, right? They know that if I swim at 1 minute per 100 pace for 5 minutes, there are only a few guys that are going to be able to do that, even with my draft, right? And so I'm going to be able to create a gap, and then I'm going to be able to stretch it out for the rest of the swim, even if I'm not swimming quite as fast as that. And so they purposefully take the first 5 minutes super hard, just to drop guys like me. And then the same thing, honestly, the same thing happens on the bike as well. Regardless of where you come out of the swim, the guys that are really strong bikers will typically put in anywhere from the first 5 minutes to the first 20 or 30 minutes, way over what their sustainable 70.3 pace would be, just to make a group or just to drop guys that are with them. And then the same thing kind of happens on the run too. The good runners, if you come off in a group, they'll take the first couple miles super hard just to drop guys, and then they'll settle into that pace. And so as an age grouper, I wouldn't recommend doing that, because it's not the most efficient way to race. It's definitely not the fastest way to race. As an age grouper, it's a much better idea to pace yourself evenly.
Mhm.
because the age group race is definitely more of a time trial effort, and it should be, and that's where you're going to get your fastest times. But the pro race, just tactically, it doesn't make sense to do that.
Yeah. So during the 17-18 season, what kind of volume were you doing, monthly, or let's say annual or weekly? What kind of volume were you doing weekly?
I was averaging anywhere from about 19 to 24 hours a week. It put me like right before the 2017 and right before the 2018 Chattanooga 70.3s. I was right around 150 CTL, chronic training load, which for the listeners is just a way to measure kind of your fitness through training peaks. And so it's basically 150 TSS per day for the preceding, I don't know how many weeks it measures, but so that was about my training load going into those races. I was typically doing about 10 to 11 hours of biking, somewhere between 4 to 5 hours of swimming, and then 3 to 5 hours of running on any given week.
Wow, 3 to 5 hours. Yeah, because I'm sure you have because you're running background, you don't have to run as much, obviously.
Yeah, so 5 hours of running was somewhere around like 40 to 45 miles a week.
Okay. Yeah. And so after 2018, you also had a great race, got third. Do you mind if I ask, what did Ironman pay you on those races?
So that's a good question. I think in 2018, I think I made somewhere around 2000, maybe a little over, maybe like $2,500, something like that. That was generally about how much I made for races. Second place in races like Eagleman was about 3,000. So sometimes the races depended on, they would prioritize certain races. I don't know if they still do that, but I know that Eagleman was like a minor league race, right? Like they didn't have as much prize money, and so you didn't get quite as deep of a field that would go to those races. There were some races that they would really stack the prize money, and so of course you'd get stronger guys showing up to them. So most of the podiums that I had were somewhere in the $2,000 to $3,000 range.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. So after 18, how much longer did you race as a pro?
My last year was 2019.
Okay.
Yeah, so I did the full in Chattanooga in 2018 in the fall, and then I attempted to do the full in Louisville in 2018. I DNF'd because of the cold. I didn't prepare quite well enough and had to DNF about a third of the way through the bike because I was too cold. And then 2019, I opened my season at Chattanooga 70.3. And unfortunately, I did DNF'd there as well because I was involved with a bike crash about 3 miles away from T2. And I broke my clavicle and had to get surgery to put a plate on it, which I still have to this day. And that was pretty much it for me. My triathlon career didn't end specifically because of that, but it definitely contributed to to that decision.
Yeah, I think Justin Park raced 2019, but I think his bird episode contributed to him not racing anymore.
Yeah.
That's sad. So now that you're retired, you think there's ever going to be a chance we'll see age grouper Adam O?
Well, if folks are following, I'm actually going to be doing a duathlon on this Saturday. It'll be my first multi-sport race since May of 2019. It's up in Hagerstown, Maryland. It's just a sprint duathlon, so it's nothing super big, but it's put on by a great race company called Racing Multisports, and I'm a big supporter of that race company. It's like a family-owned independent race company. They do duathlons and triathlons and some running races, and so I am excited to give it a shot. I have not done a whole lot of biking outdoors in the past 3 years. So I was a little anxious about that.
Let me pause you there just for 1 second. he does race on Zwift religiously. So there, yes. So, and Adam, if I'm not mistaken, ran a 15-minute 5K not too long ago. I expect this guy to win this race.
Well, I'm in pretty good shape. Yeah. So, but yeah, I'll be doing the duathlon this weekend, and then the jury is still out about what my future plans with multi-sport are going to be. I've not been swimming at all, with the exception of some summer swim, adult relays for my daughter's team. So that is definitely something that I would have to start if I was going to do triathlons in the future. I've thought about it a little bit, but have no plans to do anything longer than an Olympic at this point, anytime real soon. So yeah, we'll see. I haven't totally ruled it out, but I also kind of wanted to, part of me was I didn't want to swim just because of my clavicle, and then COVID happened and all the pools were shut down anyways. And so the swimming piece was easy to kind of drop out. But then part of it was also, I always looked at, pros that were racing pro, and then they would go back to age group and then just like clean up. Right. I'm like, like, do they really belong there? Like, I don't know. People have different feelings on that, you know? I didn't want to be that guy that was racing pro in May and then said, nah, I'm not going to race pro. And then in June was like, yeah, I'm going to just tear up this age group. You know, that just didn't seem very, it didn't seem very fair to me. So I wanted to at least put in a little gap time between racing pro and potentially racing age group. Obviously, like you said, I've still been training hard. I like it. I don't think I'll ever not train hard. That's just in my DNA. But at least there have been a few years where I've been off the scene, off the map. And now I'm turning 40 later this month. And so I feel like, okay, now technically I'm going to be a master, so I can race age group now.
Yeah. One of my biggest accomplishments is checking Zwift power and realizing I had beat Adam in a Zwift race. I have no idea which one it was, but it said I had won. It said, you know, if you check Zwift power, it's like, this is your competition. And it was like 1 win, 4 losses, Adam Otstot. And I'm like, wait, where did that come from?
I love Zwift racing. It's super fun.
It is. I've gotten away from it. I was doing it heavy in 2020. And I mean, the FTP was going up and up and up. And I was like 341 at like 160 pounds, which was, I mean, I felt like right around June when I stopped racing, like seriously on Zwift, because we were racing 2 or 3 times a week. I felt like I could pick up the house, you know, and then something happened and got sick. And then I kind of just burned out from all that racing, and then kind of backed off. And, but man, when you're in, to me, Zwift racing is better than any FTP test you could ever do, you know? So.
Yeah, I have to agree. I do workouts from time to time. I'll go in blocks where I'll do like one hard bike workout, structured bike workout a week. But if you get into certain Zwift races, I mean, you can work on different areas of your power profile just within a race. And for me, it's way more engaging. It's way more fun. It's dynamic. You learn all kinds of tactics. There's a social element to it. And of course, there's a team element too. You know, I'm racing for a Zwift team. And so just being able to sacrifice yourself for the good of others on your team and to kind of play that side of things as well has been great. And like team time trials, I mean, I find that those are the best way for me to get kind of a 20-minute effort in. Of course, most of those races are longer than 20 minutes, but you can get a pretty good gauge of what your functional threshold power is just by doing a 40-minute TTT on Zwift.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, Adam, it's been a pleasure having you on the channel, man. Thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And if anybody has any questions, you know, you can give them my contact and they're free to reach out to me and ask.
Absolutely. Are you coaching? I'm sorry, real quick. Are you coaching anyone, or do you have a coaching avenue?
I do. I'm still coaching. I coach about 20 athletes. Okay. We call ourselves the Otstot Hot Shots, and everybody. I coach. You know, my youngest client is in their mid-20s. My oldest is in their mid-70s. And we do, duathlons, triathlons, running races, everything in between. So we have a lot of fun with that.
Awesome. I'll put your contact information in the description below. So
Sure.
yeah,
Great.
yeah. Well, Adam, have a great day. Thank you very much, sir. And I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Joe.